Hello and welcome back to another episode of Charla Football. I'm your host, as always, Gerardo, accompanied today by a great friend of mine, Favian Renkel, current 90-minute USA and Leagues Cup rider as well. Bro, thank you so much for hopping on. And I see you're blowing up, so I'd love to see it for you.
Nah, man, I'm still a humble little guy that has to drive 5 hours to go to see Los Angeles Football Club, right? LAFC, and that's where I met you, right? So, thank you so much for the kind words, but yeah, still the same. I'm still the same, nothing different.
Well, again, like I said, thank you so much for being on this. We're just trying to make football grow pretty much in the States.
Yeah,
So you support your small creators. This is what I always say on the podcast. Support your small creators because together we're going to make it big. And follow Chatterlove Football, all social media platforms, YouTube, TikTok, all that good stuff, Spotify, whatever. And make sure you follow Fabian on all his things. I'll make sure to put his stuff down below as well. But yeah, let's just get right into it. I want to talk about a little bit about the Leagues Cup, the disparity between MLS and Liga MX clubs right now, because we've been seeing some pretty big blowouts, especially recently. San Jose Earthquakes just knocking the park out with Necaxa, addressing the attendance issues a little bit, and then some areas of improvement on the Leagues Cup, and then talking about the tournament itself, some teams that we're looking forward to into the round of 16, some disappointments as well, but yeah, let's get right into it, bro. So with 10 out of 18 Liga MX teams making it out of their group and 21 out of 28 MLS teams making out of their group, albeit there are more MLS teams in Liga MX, why do you think there is such a drastic difference in MLS and in Liga MX in the Leagues Cup?
yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost, this is a tournament that's played in the United States, right? So every single Liga MX game is away from home. So given, of course, Liga MX is going to have a hard time away from home. My whole thing is I don't think the kind of being away from home excuse is really good for your first game, because your first game in Leagues Cup is just an away game. So 100%, if Liga MX teams are paying attention, if they're giving it all they got, and if they're really taking this tournament seriously, that first game should be a Liga MX blowout, to be honest. And we saw with Pumas in Austin, that wasn't the case. Chino Huerta came on at halftime, or he came in, he didn't start, right? So it's just like they weren't taking the opponents too seriously. And then we saw a lot of teams already, I think, fall behind. I think it was like 10-2 or something like that right from the get. And that one is the one where it's like, all right, well, maybe they didn't take it too seriously, because that could have been an opportunity where Liga MX basically does well, because it's just like a normal away game at that point. The second game now is the tough one. It's the one where now you can have that excuse that, okay, this tournament's only played in the United States. Personally, there could be a way of maybe making Liga MX teams maybe play only the second and third game, so they have a bigger break in between, so they can have some sort of vacation time and then come in to the tournament where the second and third game they have to play in concession. I think that might be a better option, because some of the teams were waiting a big gap. I remember if it was Chivas, they played the first game and the third game, so they had a kind of a big gap in between when looking at the kind of grand scheme of things of the group. But yeah, I think personally, I thought that was the reason why they were doing bad, because it was a US-based tournament. Maybe they weren't taking it as seriously as they should have. And maybe they undervalued the MLS opponents that aren't named Lionel Messi. So, and Inter Miami, right?
Kind of like on that topic, I know a lot of people on social media have been talking about it and talking about Liga MX club, saying that they don't care about the Leagues Cup. Now, do you agree with that statement? What do you feel? What did that make you feel when you hear that?
Yeah, a lot of it reminds me of like your best friend when he plays FIFA against like his younger brother, and he's like, I wasn't taking it seriously. What are you talking about? And then once his little brother starts to get good, and then the more excuses come, So it's like when your little brother beats you, it's like, but we don't know. I don't even want to play today, So that's what I thought. And then once you see, I know Tano Ortiz is a big head time coach that maybe is underperformed, getting fired right after Leagues Cup, not even a single game after Leagues Cup. Okay, maybe these teams should have took it a little more seriously. Like, especially Chivas is a team where it's like, man, how do you not make the second round, but you're supposed to be a contender in Liga MX, right? So it's something that, I don't know. I think teams maybe, I thought they were going to take it a little more serious than last year, because all I heard this last year was how, from execs of high Chivas jobs or high Pumas jobs, like they were disrespected and they felt embarrassed that they got skunked by MLS last season. But then nothing really changed this season. So it's just interesting to see. But yeah, I kind of agree with you in a sense that maybe they didn't take it as seriously. But if you look at teams like Tigres has taken it serious since first game, and Tigres is always a contender and a dark horse. Not even a dark horse. I think they're slated to be the best team in the tournament. I think they're slated to win it for sure.
Definitely one of the favorites for sure. And we'll talk about that more towards the end of the podcast. Now, addressing a little bit of the attendance that we've been seeing. I know a lot of people have been talking about that on social media as well, posting pictures of some empty stadiums, some really full stadiums. So I just wanted to get your insight and your reading as to why some of the matches are full and other matches are empty. I know there are some pictures of the New England Revolution game versus New York City FC where there was maybe like not even 1,000 fans in attendance. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
LAFC versus Austin as well had a quite disappointing turnout, even though they are, I mean, typically the fans always show out for LAFC games. But then when it comes to Liga MX teams, Chivas versus LA Galaxy, that was an insane atmosphere. It was all Chivas right there. And then America versus Atlas had a really good atmosphere as well. So I just wanted to get your insight on this attendance pretty much.
Look, what I've kind of read up on and I've kind of seen is that a lot of tickets were maybe jumped up in 25% in price. And to be honest, if you're a New England Revolution season ticket holder, why am I going to pay 25% more to go see a team we already played this year and a team that doesn't have superstars like Lionel Messi, right? So why am I going to pay that price hike? Shoot, they don't even have a superstar like Muriel, So it's like, it's something where it's like, is it worth it? And then on top of that, for the Revolution, it was like a hurricane watch. So are you going to go see New York versus New England in New England in the middle of a hurricane and to pay more? No, of course not. So there is flaws in this tournament, and that's totally normal. This tournament's only 2 years old. That's definitely one of the flaws, is to charge a premium price for a product that people have already seen. And it's not any different. Like, I think Toronto played Miami and they were giving away tickets for free, right? So even Miami fans were complaining about not seeing any superstars. They field Busquets, Alba, and Suarez almost every game, right? So it's always going to happen. I mean, there's always going to be a reason for fans to not be happy and want to not to go to games, okay? No problem. Don't go to the game. No issue at all. Don't go to the game. But again, there's other things like for LAFC. I think that one's a little different. I think everybody kind of knows that if LAFC goes far because of the way their standings were the last MLS season, they'll host every single game. So it's like, how do you sell an Austin LAFC game or a LAFC Vancouver when LAFC is going to get the job done, right? So you can just watch that game at home and then just go to the next one where Giroud is going to, possibly get his first start and you're paying the same price, right? So it's just, that one's a little weird. I'll give you that one should be a little more, but it's like, it's almost like you're spoiled if you're an LAFC fan because you can know you're going to go far. So it's like, it's really a give or take. But then you have the Quakes on the other hand, where you have 55,000 at Levi's, a lot of them being Chivas fans. But I interviewed a whole bunch of fans outside of the stadium. I saw people with Chivas jerseys and Quakes jerseys underneath. So it's like there is an overlap there where you have Chivas and Quakes fans and people coming to see Cade Cal for both teams, right? So you got to kind of realize that. There was a lot of Chivas fans, but there was a lot of Quakes fans too. And if you're a Quakes fan, that's the game you had circled on your calendar the whole year because you knew Cade was going to come back. You knew it was going to be an awesome atmosphere. And then you also have Necaxa at the Earthquakes on a regular Thursday that, sometimes I see about 6,000 people on a Wednesday night game in San Jose versus Seattle, versus even when I went to go see Inter Miami when Higuain was on the team, would come to San Jose, it was probably like 4,000 people, 6,000 people in the stands on a Wednesday. Just because the way the Bay Area works, people don't really travel on weekday games because of the traffic, right? So to see that many people show up for the Necaxa San Jose game, I thought that was a win. Even though it doesn't look like the 40,000, the 50,000, 30,000, So Atlanta is another one where it was like, okay, yeah, DC United versus Atlanta. 1, Atlanta doesn't have any players. 2, Atlanta's not having a good season. And who wants to come see DC United already when you already seen them, right? So it's like, I think a lot of MLS versus MLS games could have been different. I personally think they should add more teams into this tournament so that doesn't happen as often, because I don't think anybody wants to see MLS versus MLS again. after just seeing it the whole season, and then you have some more coming, right?
Because it kind of makes it redundant. And I want to touch on that. Oh, what would you say?
Or have like Inter Miami play in Los Angeles, have LAFC play in New York, right? Have these, make it so that it's not a home game for all the teams. Make it an away game for every single team and see what you get, right? So if you get, shoot, I bet you anything, if Miami actually came to LA and actually brought, Suarez to the West Coast, because this season Suarez only played once on the West Coast, I feel like people would show up, so you wouldn't get the Miami having to give away tickets. But then again, if you get Seattle playing in Miami, I don't think anybody goes. So you have to be very, very distinctive on what teams you put in the hubs, like how they put the Mexican teams in hubs. Shoot, why not just put the, U.S. teams in hubs too? So like the big ones, like a Columbus or a Miami or even LAFC in different hubs where you feel like they could sell some games, right? Like Chicago. If you put Miami in Chicago, they're going to sell every single game. That's 100%.
Now, when you were talking about the redundancy, almost, I know Alexi Lalas was kind of vocal about this on Twitter, so I wanted to get your insight on what he had to say as well on the Leagues Cup, talking about how Messi's not playing. I know you kind of touched on that. The fans don't know what Leagues Cup is, which I don't agree with, because everybody knows, at least everybody in North America, understand the Leagues Cup. Whether they agree with it or not, that's a different story. The crowded summer schedule with the Euros, Copa America, and the Olympics, MLS content remaining hidden behind Apple, which I wanted to understand what he meant by that. So I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
We already talked about MLS versus MLS matchups being redundant, and then he reiterated the fact that Messi is not playing.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? If Messi's not playing, 90% of people aren't watching. That's the honest truth. 90% of people around the world, yeah, Messi's this, Messi that. I'm sick and tired of seeing Messi. I don't want to know about Messi news. But if Messi's getting you 90% of your base, unfortunately, guys, Messi news and Messi content's gonna happen. And he's just that guy. If Griezmann came over here, it wouldn't be like that. It would be a big push at the beginning, of course, but it wouldn't be like Messi coming over and 80% of the world that usually watches Messi play not watching anymore, right? So I just think it's unfortunate. I do agree with him on it being in a really, really jam-packed kind of summer with the Euros, with Copa America, where, I mean, people only have this finite number for entertainment, right? If you spent money to go to a Copa America game in Vegas, or if you went to a Copa America game in Miami, why would you kind of go to a, Toronto FC versus Miami game if it's, similar in terms of price, right? Like maybe you spent all the money on Copa America instead of, you're guaranteed to see Messi because Messi's gonna play. He's gonna travel, right? So it's just, I think that's another thing. I think a lot of people already use a lot of those funds. I think, and rightfully so. I mean, Copa America's here, rightfully so. You guys go spend your money on Copa America. Like, I work for MLS, I work for Leagues Cup, excuse me, and I would still spend my money on Copa America, right? Because that's one of the best tournaments in the world. You see the best players against the best players. It's country is always more emotional than club, and that's the honest truth, right? So no, I think it's a lot of that. But the paywall thing, the Apple thing, I don't agree with. I think, like, for right now, I know Tigres NYCFC for the round of 16 will be available on Unimas, TUDN, and FS1. So, and Apple TV. So it's going to be on all things. So I don't agree with that one, to be honest. Especially because everybody knows how to illegally stream. Everybody knows it. We don't have to bring it up. Everybody knows. Everybody's been in the pinch. So I think if you want to watch the games, you'll watch them.
Now, talking about the grand scheme of things, how important is the Leagues Cup? And I'm only bringing this up because I feel like some people just might not know what happens when you win it, the finalists, and what happens after that.
Yeah, well, my whole thing too is these are competitive matches. It's not a friendly, right? Like, it's not Holland coming over here, raw dogging a flight for 5 hours, spelling Ornaldo wrong. It's not that, right? That's a spectacle. That, to me, that's more like a Broadway show, right? It's a preseason game, right? So this is a competitive match that has a CONCACAF Champions League, or excuse me, a CONCACAF Champions Cup berth involved with it. So if you're the San Jose Earthquakes and you're not going to make the top 3 teams, you might as well go for this like it's your season, right? You might as well think of this game as everything for your season, because if you're in the Champions League next year and you were last place in MLS, so what? You're in Champions League this next year, and now you're with the big dogs. So I think that is overlooked a lot. I mean, maybe a lot of these fan bases have Champions League berths all the time, like LAFC, like Miami, like Columbus. So they kind of think, whatever, it's not a big deal. But guys like San Jose, like this is like life or death. I mean, this is everything, right? So they haven't been to the CONCACAF Champions League since Wando, when they played against Toluca. Like that, I think it was like 2013, right? So it means a lot to some of these small clubs, and it's shocking to see some of the small clubs not taking it too seriously either. So I don't know. It's interesting to think about, but in the grand scheme of things, I think, the only way, now this is real big scale. All right. Stay with me on this. If North American soccer wants to compete with England, I think eventually Liga MX and MLS and Canada, whatever they have, the Canadian Premier League, or if they have the MLS teams, eventually have to be one league. And this is something that I believe, and I can be terribly wrong on this, but this is the only way, in my opinion, that you can compete with the views that Liverpool versus Man City get. If you get Chivas versus LAFC for a title, that's going to get the same amount of numbers as your Man City Liverpool would get here. So I think personally, Leagues Cup is the way of the future in terms of kind of competing with the European soccer market. Now, Leagues Cup versus Open Cup, I like Open Cup. I started my journalistic career writing about Open Cup. So I think Open Cup is a great tournament for soccer as a whole. And I don't agree with the MLS decisions of making the two teams compete. I think that should be up to the clubs instead of kind of like an overview of every team should not, I'm going to choose which club plays their two team and no, it should be the clubs, what players they want to play, and have some more transparency and kind of movement from the first to second team for this tournament, because that's what they do in England, right? Liverpool plays in the EFL Cup, and then it's, they play the second string guys until the quarterfinals, which the Open Cup should be too. So that's why I think that was the wrong move by Don Garber. And that's where this whole thing even stems from, this Open Cup versus Leagues Cup, because it comes down to games. And then, I mean, they don't have to play the guys now either, right? My opinion, if you're in Leagues Cup and you're playing your guys, it's because there's a CONCACAF Champions League berth in the winnings, right? And that's why you're the Seattle Sounders playing for this kind of thing, right? So I don't know. To me, I think you could do both. You really could do both, and then just expand the rosters and raise the salary cap. And that's an easy fix, in my opinion.
There's a lot of things that definitely are of improvement and that can be improved. And I wanted to touch on that too. I know you already brought up a lot of, that was like a grand idea for you for an improvement in the Leagues Cup. If there's anything else that you can think of, I had jotted down a few things. Home and away matches obviously would be great to see. That way there's more of an advantage for Mexican teams as well, because like you said in the beginning, that's the biggest disadvantage, is that technically they're not playing a home match. So home and away matches would be nice to see in the Leagues Cup. And then I did see this idea. It was just someone that posted on social media as well about just beefing up the Champions League and just getting rid of the Leagues Cup. If U.S. teams and Liga MX are not participating in one of the toughest, most prestigious competitions in the world, like the Libertadores too, I think it would be so cool to bring someone from like some teams from Libertadores to come compete in the CONCACAF Champions League and getting rid of the Leagues Cup overall. But that was just what I thought. I don't know. Yeah,
well, those are good ideas too. So like, I even floated out the idea like, okay, Leagues Cup, it's kind of a made-up tournament. I mean, it is a real tournament, but it's kind of made up on the spot. Why not invite a Saudi team? Like, why not invite the Japanese champion, right? Like, why not get enough teams where every group has 4 kind of stages? And shoot, if Al Nassr is playing versus Sporting KC, I bet you 100% that sells 40,000 tickets. 100%. Maybe the Mexican teams don't draw the same as on the East Coast than the West Coast. So then let's find other teams to kind of compete in this, or even the Caribbean teams. Even see, that one's a little tougher to me because like it's going to be hard to sell DC United Atlanta. It's going to be hard to sell the Caribbean teams too, right? But a league like Saudi, it's like, oh, well, you know, money talks, you know, so like they could probably come over and play a tournament, and then, you know, shoot, you have Qatar teams that have players that people know, you have Saudi teams, you have Japanese teams that people like. There really is a whole bunch of options, and it doesn't just have to be Mexico, US. In my opinion, I would say, shoot, even invite the Canadian Premier League teams and let them have a go, right? So that one should happen next year because the Canadian team should have a go at the kind of the tournament. I mean, that's an easy fix in my opinion. I think there's a couple of easy fixes. You put the best MLS teams in hubs too. You add more teams. You make every group 4, and this tournament's looking better already.
Mm-hmm. Completely agreed. Now, kind of wrapping things up and now just getting into the Leagues Cup, the present of the Leagues Cup right now. Has there been a team that has shocked you and a team that has disappointed you for both MLS and Liga MX?
Yeah, disappointment for sure. Monterrey, right? Monterrey is a big one. You expect Rayados to be the powerhouse. I mean, they literally took it to Messi. I still remember that day. And they just bounced Inter Miami out of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And they did it with this bravado. They did it with this trash talk. They did it with not caring about who Messi was just to get beat by Austin. Come on, like, dude, what are you guys doing? You know, like, you guys are the team in Liga MX, in my opinion, and one of the, you know, the big contenders to kind of take it all. And you just didn't show up. You just said, all right, let's go at it, you know? So my personal opinion, I think, yeah, Rayados is definitely a big one. Chivas, I don't think they knew how to even qualify because when they lost the Quakes, they're like, okay, no problem. You know, we'll just get the next game, and then not realizing that it's not on goal differential, that the tiebreaker is actually on the penalty kick wins. I think they found themselves out of the tournament because I know there's a lot of fans that didn't understand that they were actually out and the Quakes are in. You know, so it's just interesting to see kind of that whole thing, maybe with time, right? Who knows?
And a team that has shocked you?
Oh, a team that shocked me. I mean, shoot, New York City FC. They haven't won a single game, and they're in the round of 16, right? So that one's a shocker, just because you can win penalty kicks and you're in, right? So that's kind of a cool thing. It's a little bit of a Cinderella underdog story, but I think that's a pretty much a shocker. The Quakes too. The Quakes are a little bit of a shocker just because they're really showing off. I mean, 5-0 against Necaxa, that's something to be proud of, especially the way Necaxa kind of took it to Seattle in Seattle. I don't know. That's the one that's tough for me. Is it like, did Necaxa not show up because they thought they were playing the worst team in MLS, or did the Quakes just, you know, say this is our season? You know, we got to put everything on the line now.
Definitely. Now, who are your favorites to win the entire competition and your top 3 to qualify into the CONCACAF Champions League? I know it's hard to tell because we're barely round of 16, but if you can just throw out a guess, who would you put in there?
Yeah, look, there is contenders and there's pretenders, right? Like, we all know that. Tigres, for me, is a contender. I think they're one of the big-time favorites. Columbus Crew, big-time favorites. Now that Cincinnati's healthy and they got Miles Robinson back from the Olympics, I think that they're going to be one of the big contenders. We even might see a Hell is Real semifinal on that side because I feel like both of those teams are just going to kind of run through. If it's not Tigres versus Columbus on the quarterfinal match, which is another great match. On the left side, I think LAFC is definitely that team, especially with Giroud. What I'm worried about is Giroud going to ruin that counterattack kind of that they have. Is Giroud too slow to run with Buonga and Oliveira? That's a big question mark for me. But yeah, I would say those 4 are the big ones: LAFC, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Tigres.
I put LAFC, I put Tigres, and I threw America in there just because.
Oh yeah, America! How can I forget about America? Yeah,
you know, they're definitely one of the big dogs, and they have so much talent. Javaito, Eric Sanchez, Brian Rodriguez, Jonathan Dos Santos. I mean, they have a stacked squad along with Tigres as well. LAFC bringing in Giroud. I mean, I get what you're saying where he might slow down the attack, but I mean, when you have a killer like that inside of the box, yes, he's 37 years old, but I mean, I'm pretty sure he can still bag a few goals at least in the Leagues Cup and in the regular season as well.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, there's a lot of exciting things. I know there's games going on for the next 2 3 weeks still. So
Yeah, finally we get little breaks though. It's not like every day.
But all right, bro. Well, I'm gonna start wrapping things up. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. And make sure you guys follow Favian, please, on all social media platforms. Follow Charla Football, YouTube, Spotify, all that good stuff. And support your small creators because together we're gonna make it big. Again, thank you, Favian. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.